We landed in one of those corkscrew landings and ran out because they said there might be sniper fire. I don't remember anybody offering me tea on the tarmac when that was happening.
Then in February.
The welcoming ceremony had to be moved inside because of sniper fire.
And last week.
I remember landing under sniper fire. We basically were told to run to our cars. Now that is what happened.
Some differing accounts of your trip to Bosnia, and I'm wondering if you can clarify. I know you recalled, ducking under sniper fire, and Sinbad, in his account, who's on the trip, he said that the most dangerous part was remembering where he was going to eat next.
He's a comedian, you know, Jeff. He's a comedian.
So you actually recall, hearing gunfire, and were you
when we were flying into Bosnia, we came in a evasive maneuver. There was no greeting ceremony, and we basically were told to run to our cars. Now that is what happened.
After CBS News video showed what really happened when she landed and greeted officials, Senator Clinton maintained there were risks, but explained to the Philadelphia Daily News why she was seen on the Bosnian tarmac greeting a young child if it was really so dangerous.
I was also told that the greeting ceremony had been moved away from the tarmac, but that there was this 8-year-old girl, and I said, well, I can't rush by her. I've got to at least greet her. So I greeted her, I took her stuff, and I left. Now that's my memory of it.
Good to see you.
Once again, her memory doesn't match our videotape. She and her daughter Chelsea lingered on the tarmac to greet U.S. military officials, took photos. There was the group of 7th graders on the tarmac too. And then Senator Clinton walked to the armored vehicle where she did eventually duck and enter.
But I want to say one thing to the American people. I want you to listen to me. I'm going to say this again. I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. I never told anybody to lie, not a single time, never. These allegations are false, and I need to go back to work for the American people. Thank you.
Indeed, I did have a relationship with Miss Lewinsky that was not appropriate. In fact, it was wrong. It constituted a critical lapse in judgment and a personal failure on my part for which I am solely and completely responsible.
And I interviewed her earlier, Carly Fiorina. She says basically this charge about you, and you've heard it from her directly, that you're simply a career politician who has no experience in the real world creating jobs. I'll play this little clip, what she told me.
Sure. Where has Barbara Boxer been for the last 6 years, the last 12 years, the last 18 years, the last 28 years that she's been in Washington, D.C.? Where has she been? Where she's been is voting for more taxes, voting for more borrowing and spending.
All right, your chance to respond to her.
Well, she's just wrong on that. I voted for over $2 trillion of tax cuts. The largest one was in the stimulus bill. But I have to say, she talks about 12 years. Look, I was there in 1992, and I supported Bill Clinton. And we know that in that period of time, those budgets that I voted for and those economic policies created 23 million jobs, the best in modern history. That's the fact. And we not only balanced the budget, we created surpluses. Then you had George W. come in, George W. Bush come in, and in about, a few minutes, it felt like, we saw those surpluses disappear. We saw a horrible record of job creation, the worst since the Great Depression, only 1 million new jobs. And at the end of the Bush term, 700,000 jobs a month bleeding. So she's just wrong. And
when you say,
she
Senator,
acts as if I didn't get, I got elected. Wolf, I got elected all those times, and I'm hoping to get elected this time.
But when you say you supported $2 trillion in tax cuts during the stimulus?
Tax cuts, yes, I have them. During my career.
Oh, during your
career.
I thought you just said during the stimulus.
Yes.
When you said you supported $2 trillion.
1.2 trillion with a stimulus.
There was a $1.2 trillion in tax cuts in the stimulus?
There was a lot. Well, I will put it this way. Over time, that's what it will be when you figure all the tax cuts over time. And what we did for the senior citizens, giving them back those refunds. So there was a lot. Actually, a third of the stim was direct tax cuts.
Yeah, but that would be maybe $200 or $300 million. We're not talking about a trillion.
So let me say this. A third of the stim, and over my time, let me correct it, you're right. Thank you. 2.2 trillion I voted in tax cuts, 1.2 trillion of which became law. A third of the stim was tax cuts, and it was considered the biggest tax cut in history over a couple-of-year period.
The Leader of the Opposition's called for an investigation into your tax affairs for your own interests. Can you clarify for the record that you and your family have not derived any benefit in the past and will not in the future from the offshore Blairmore Holdings Fund mentioned in the Panama Papers?
Sure. Look, what we need, the investigation we need, first of all, is for HMRC, our tax authority, to use all the information that is coming out of Panama to make sure that everything's done, to make sure that companies and individuals are paying their taxes properly. In many ways, what's coming out of Panama is actually what we're introducing in our own country, which is a register of beneficial ownership, so everyone can see who owns what company. As for the two things I'm responsible for are my own financial affairs and for the tax system of the United Kingdom. In terms of my own financial affairs, I own no shares. I have a salary as Prime Minister, and I have some savings, which I get some interest from, and I have a house, which we used to live in, which we now let out while we're living in Downing Street. And that's all I have. I have no shares, no offshore trusts, no offshore funds, nothing like that. Samantha and I had a joint account, and we owned 5,000 units in Blairmore Investment Trust, which we sold in January 2010. That was worth something like £30,000.
Is there a profit on it?
I'd paid income tax on the dividends, but there was a profit on it, but it was less than the capital gains tax allowance, so I didn't pay capital gains tax, but it was subject to all the UK taxes in all the normal ways.